I never thought I'd be telling this story. Even now, as I sit in my study overlooking the Seattle skyline, the memories feel like scenes from someone else's life. But maybe sharing this will help others see the signs I missed. Rachel and I had what most people would call a picture-perfect marriage. 15 years of building a life together, starting from our humble beginnings in a cramped apartment when I was still grinding through my software engineering career. She stood by me through endless late nights of coding, celebrating every small victory as if it were her own. Her unwavering support helped me climb to my current position as a senior developer at a respected tech firm. The first hint that something was shifting came during last year's holiday season. Rachel, usually the one who orchestrated our elaborate Christmas gatherings, seemed distracted during our annual party. I caught her standing alone on our deck, staring at her phone with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of guilt and excitement that vanished the moment she noticed me. "Just checking work emails," she said, sliding the phone into her pocket with unusual haste. "The gallery's winter showcase is keeping me busier than usual." I nodded, ignoring the slight tremor in her voice. Rachel had built her art gallery from scratch, and I'd always admired her dedication. But lately her dedication felt different, more like distance. That night, as our guests laughed and mingled around our carefully decorated home, I watched her from across the room. Her laugh seemed practiced, her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes, and she kept checking her phone when she thought no one was looking. Later, as we cleaned up together in comfortable silence, a routine we'd perfected over years, she paused while washing a wine glass. "Jason," she said, not meeting my eyes, "do you ever feel like life is moving too predictably?" The question hung in the air like frost, and something in my chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She shrugged, resuming her methodical cleaning. "Nothing specific, just thinking out loud." But I knew my wife. After 15 years, you learn to read between the lines. Something was shifting, like the first hairline crack in a foundation, barely visible, but deep enough to threaten everything built upon it. I went to bed that night with an unfamiliar weight in my stomach, telling myself I was overthinking things. Rachel curled up on her side, further away than usual, her breathing too measured to be natural. As I stared at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that our carefully constructed life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet imagine. I wish I'd known then just how right that feeling would turn out to be. The changes in Rachel were like watching a photograph slowly fade, so gradual you question if your memory of the original is accurate. January brought more late nights at the gallery, more distracted conversations over dinner, more moments when I'd catch her lost in thought, twisting her wedding ring with restless fingers. I threw myself into work, debugging code until my eyes burned, telling myself that every relationship goes through phases. But the silence in our home grew heavier, filled with words we weren't saying. The easy intimacy we'd built over 15 years felt increasingly choreographed, like actors hitting their marks without genuine connection. One evening, I came home early, hoping to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. The house was dark except for a soft glow from her home office. I found her sitting at her desk, staring at her laptop with such intensity she didn't notice me. Her face was illuminated by the screen's blue light, and for a moment, she looked like a stranger, sharp angles and shadows where I was used to seeing warmth. "Ratch," she startled, closing the laptop too quickly. "Jason, I didn't expect you home so early. Thought we could have dinner together, like we used to." Something flickered across her face. Guilt? Annoyance? Before she composed herself. "That's sweet, but I already ate. The winter's collection needs to be cataloged by tomorrow." I set the takeout bag on her desk, next to a half-empty wine glass I hadn't noticed before. "You're working too hard lately. The gallery's important to me," she said, her tone carrying an edge I couldn't quite decode. "Not everyone wants to stay in the same comfortable routine forever." The words stung more than they should have. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." She stood, smoothing her silk blouse. New, I realized, though I couldn't remember when she'd bought it. "I'm just stressed about work. Don't read too much into it." But as I watched her walk past me, catching a whiff of an unfamiliar perfume, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were reading from different scripts entirely. The Rachel I knew would have shared her stress, would have curled up with me on the couch and talked it through. This Rachel felt like she was performing for an audience I couldn't see. Later that night, I lay awake, listening to her breathe and remembering how she used to unconsciously reach for my hand in her sleep. Now, she lay perfectly still, maintaining careful inches between us like an invisible wall. I wanted to bridge that gap, to ask the questions building in my throat. But something held me back. Maybe fear of the answers, or maybe the growing suspicion that I was losing her in ways I didn't yet understand. February arrived with Seattle's characteristic gray skies and persistent rain, matching the atmosphere in our home. Each conversation felt like walking through a minefield, searching for safe topics that wouldn't trigger Rachel's increasingly unpredictable mood swings. One Sunday morning, as I sipped coffee and scrolled through work emails, Rachel emerged from her shower looking polished and pressed, unusual for our typically lazy weekend mornings. "Gallery emergency?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Brunch with Madison," she replied, applying lipstick without meeting my eyes in the hallway mirror. Madison, her college friend who'd recently divorced. "She needs support right now." I watched her movements, precise and deliberate, like a dancer marking her steps. "I could join you both. Haven't seen Madison in a while." Her hand paused, almost imperceptibly. "Oh, she's pretty emotional right now. Probably better to keep it just as girls." As she gathered her things, I noticed she'd switched her usual tote for a sleek designer bag I didn't recognize. Her wedding ring caught the light as she checked her phone, and I remembered how she used to tell everyone the story of my proposal. How I'd saved for months while living on ramen to buy that ring. How she cried when I knelt in that little park where we first met. Now she wore it like an accessory that no longer matched her evolving style. "Don't wait up," she called over her shoulder. "Madison might need a long talk." The front door closed with a soft click that echoed through our suddenly empty home. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark computer screen, remembering all the Sundays we used to spend together, making pancakes, planning our future, just being us. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, my best friend since college. "Racquetball? Getting soft in your old age." I almost declined, but the thought of sitting alone in our quiet house, imagining Rachel consoling Madison about her failed marriage, made me reply, "Meet you in 30. At the gym, between games, Tom studied me with the kind of attention that comes from 2 decades of friendship. "You seem off. Rachel's been different lately." I admitted, the words feeling like betrayal somehow. "Different how?" I bounced the ball, watching it create predictable patterns against the wall. Like she's playing a part in a play, but I never got the script. Tom was quiet for a moment. "Jason, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything." I caught the ball, feeling its familiar weight. "Yeah, I know. I need to figure out if I'm imagining things first." But driving home later, muscles aching pleasantly, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a house made of paper walls. Everything appearing solid until the slightest pressure revealed its fragility. Rachel's car wasn't in the driveway when I got home. A text waited on my phone, "Having dinner with Madison too. Don't worry about me." The heart emoji felt like an afterthought, a habit she hadn't yet broken. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of our shared life. Photos, wedding gifts, the coffee maker she'd surprised me with last Christmas, and wondered when our relationship had become something that needed to be maintained rather than lived. I'd never been the type to snoop, but anxiety has a way of changing your principles. That night, as Rachel's side of the bed remained empty, I found myself staring at her laptop on her desk, its presence like a challenge in the darkness. She'd always known my passwords. I had nothing to hide. But somewhere along the way, she'd changed hers. I discovered this accidentally last month when trying to print some documents from her computer. The realization had lodged in my chest like a splinter. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, shame and desperation warring inside me. In the end, I couldn't do it. Instead, I pulled up our joint credit card statement on my phone, a compromise with my conscience that felt marginally less invasive. The screen's blue light illuminated recent charges. Several at her usual coffee shop, art supplies, gallery expenses. and then something caught my eye. A charge at La Maison d'Or, an upscale French restaurant downtown. 3 weeks ago, on a night, she'd said she was working late. The amount was for two. My throat tightened. I clicked through to previous statements, patterns emerging like constellations. Small charges at places she'd never mentioned, at times that didn't match her stories. Nothing definitive, just discrepancies. Paper cuts to my trust. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Madison's having a rough night. Staying at her place. Don't worry about me. Sleep well. I stared at that heart emoji, remembering how she used to send me random texts throughout the day, silly jokes, photos of street art she'd spotted, just "I love you" out of nowhere. Now her messages felt like status updates, carefully crafted to maintain distance. Sleep evaded me. I lay in our bed, surrounded by the ghosts of easier times. The Sunday mornings reading together, the lazy kisses, the shared dreams we used to whisper in the dark. Now the darkness felt empty, filled only with questions I was afraid to ask. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up again. A notification that Rachel had been tagged in a photo. My thumb moved before I could stop it. The photo was from Madison's Instagram story, posted 2 hours ago. Rachel wasn't in it. Just Madison, alone at her book club meeting, the caption reading, "Tuesday night traditions." My ears started ringing. Tuesday night traditions, which meant Madison wasn't with Rachel at all. I sat there in the dark, holding this new knowledge like a shard of glass, watching as it slowly cut through the last threads of my denial. The question wasn't whether Rachel was lying anymore. The question was why. Sleep never came that night. I watched dawn creep across our bedroom ceiling, the same ceiling we'd stared at years ago while planning our future. Back then, Rachel would curl into my side, tracing patterns on my chest as we dreamed about the house we'd buy, the family we might have, the life we'd build together. Around 6, I heard her key in the lock. My heart hammered against my ribs as her footsteps moved through our home, hesitant, like a stranger navigating unfamiliar territory. I closed my eyes when our bedroom door opened, maintaining steady breaths as she slipped inside. The scent that followed her wasn't her usual perfume. She moved quietly, gathering fresh clothes, and disappeared into our en-suite bathroom. The shower started running, and I thought about all the layers she was washing away, preparing to step back into the role of devoted wife. When she emerged, I was sitting up in bed, my laptop open as if I'd been working early. "You're up," she said, surprise flickering across her face before being replaced by a carefully neutral expression. "Early meeting. Couldn't sleep." I watched her hands as she smoothed her damp hair. No tremor, no sign of guilt. When had she become so good at this? "How's Madison?" "Still struggling." She turned away, organizing things in her closet. It's hard, watching someone's marriage fall apart. The irony felt like acid in my throat. "Yeah, I imagine it is." Something in my tone made her pause. She turned slowly, studying me with those green eyes that used to hold only warmth. Now, they reminded me of deep water, beautiful but dangerous. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice carrying just the right amount of concern. I thought about the Instagram post, the restaurant charge, all the small lies piling up like snowflakes before an avalanche. "I don't know, Ratch. You tell me." Her expression shifted, so subtle I would have missed it if I hadn't been watching so carefully. Fear? Calculation? Both? What does that mean? But before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and for a split second, her mask slipped. Longing flashed across her face, the kind of look she used to give me. "I need to get to the gallery early," she said, already moving toward the door. "We'll talk tonight?" I nodded, knowing we wouldn't. She'd find another excuse, another emergency, another lie to maintain this elaborate dance we were performing. After she left, I sat in our quiet bedroom, surrounded by photographs of happier times. In each one, Rachel smiled at the camera, young and in love. I studied those images, trying to pinpoint the moment when my wife had become an actress in our marriage, and I had become her unsuspecting audience. The woman who left our house this morning was a stranger wearing my wife's face, and I was finally ready to discover who she'd really become. There's something surreal about sitting at your desk, writing code like everything's normal, while your world crumbles beneath the surface. That morning, after Rachel left, I moved through our life like a ghost, seeing everything through new eyes. Our home office, once a shared space, now felt like a crime scene. Little details I'd overlooked suddenly screamed for attention. The drawer that used to hold our shared documents was now locked. Her carefully organized calendar on the wall had gaps, blank spaces that didn't match her supposed gallery events. I opened my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard before typing. Signs your wife is cheating. The cursor blinked accusingly. I closed the browser, disgusted with myself. But the thoughts wouldn't stop. Every memory began to twist, like looking through a warped mirror. The business trips that had grown more frequent. The new clothes. The gym membership she'd started last month. The way she kept her phone face down. A text from her lit up my phone. Working late again. Don't wait up. I stared at that heart emoji until my vision blurred. Then I did something I'd never done before. I pulled up the Find My Phone app we'd set up years ago for emergencies. Her duck blinked at me from a location downtown, nowhere near her gallery. My hands were shaking as I saved a screenshot. Part of me wanted to drive there, to catch her in whatever lie she was living. But a deeper part knew I wasn't ready for what I might find. Instead, I found myself opening our wedding album. There she was, radiant in white, looking at me like I was her whole world. I traced her face in the photo, remembering how she'd cried during our vows, how she'd promised to always be honest, to face life's challenges together. When did you become such a good actress? I whispered to her smiling image. My phone rang, startling me. Tom's name flashed on the screen. Hey, Mun. Sarah told me Rachel's been acting weird. Want to grab a drink? I closed the wedding album. Yeah, I think I do. An hour later, sitting in a dimly lit bar, I told Tom everything. The lies, the changes, the Instagram post, the mystery location downtown. Speaking it aloud made it real in a way that turned my stomach. Jesus, Jason. Tom's face was grim. What are you going to do? I took a long drink, feeling the burn of whiskey. I don't know. Part of me wants to confront her. Part of me is terrified of what I'll learn. Maybe, Tom hesitated. Maybe it's not what you think. But we both knew better. The Rachel I married would never have lied about where she was. Would never have locked drawers or hidden passwords. Would never have become this stranger who wore my wife's face, but carried secrets in her heart. I have to know, I finally said. Whatever it is, I have to know. Tom nodded slowly. Just be prepared. Sometimes the truth is worse than not knowing. Later, walking home through Seattle's misty evening, I realized he was right. Whatever I discovered would change everything. There would be no going back to the comfortable lies, the polite fiction we'd been living. I just didn't know if I was ready for what waited on the other side of truth. The weekend arrived with Seattle's signature rain, drops tapping against our windows like Morse code I couldn't decipher. Rachel was at the gallery, preparing for an upcoming show. The lie rolled off her tongue over breakfast, smooth as honey, while she avoided my eyes. I sat in our living room, surrounded by the artwork we'd collected together over the years. Each piece had a story: weekend trips to small galleries, celebrations of milestones, moments when we'd fallen in love with the same image at first sight. Now they felt like artifacts from a museum of lost things. My laptop hummed softly as I pulled up our phone records. A single number appeared with suspicious frequency, always during her late nights and gallery emergencies. Most calls lasted between 20 and 40 minutes. My stomach churned as I saved the information to a folder I'd labeled Home Renovation Ideas, my first real step into deception. The irony wasn't lost on me. A text from Rachel lit up my phone. Big breakthrough with the Winters collection. Working through dinner. Miss you. I checked Find My Phone. Heard a blink from an upscale residential area in Queen and miles from her gallery. Each lie was becoming more elaborate, like a spider weaving a web it would eventually get caught in. Unable to sit still, I walked through our house, really seeing it for the first time in months. Her presence, or rather, her absence, echoed in every room. The book she'd been reading hadn't moved from her nightstand in weeks. Her favorite coffee mug sat dusty in the cabinet. Even her scent was different, as if she were slowly erasing herself from our space. In her closet, reaching for an old photo album, I knocked over a shopping bag. A receipt fluttered out. La Perla, a luxury lingerie brand she'd never worn for me. The date matched one of her gallery events. The amount made me wince. My phone rang, startling me. "Tom, Sarah saw Rachel today," he said without preamble. "At Café Louis." My heart stuttered. The gallery's nowhere near there. She wasn't alone, Jason. The world tilted sideways. "Tell me." "Some guy in a suit." Sarah said. She said they looked close. Intimate. Tom's voice was gentle, carrying the weight of confirmation I'd been dreading. "There's more." Sarah recognized him. Marcus Wheeler, the real estate developer. The name hit me like a physical blow. Marcus Wheeler, whose name regularly graced Seattle's society pages, whose net worth was probably more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes, whose recent donation to Rachel's gallery had been, in her words, a game changer. She was wearing her blue dress, Tom added softly. "The one you got her for your anniversary." I sank to the floor of her closet, that blue dress hanging above me like a banner of betrayal. Every tender moment attached to it. The way her eyes had lit up when she opened the box, how she'd sworn to save it for special occasions with me, now felt tainted. The truth was crystallizing, sharp enough to draw blood. But I needed more than secondhand sightings and circumstantial evidence. I needed to see it with my own eyes, to understand exactly what I was up against. Because this wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about power, money, and a caliber of deception I was only beginning to comprehend. That night, sleep eluded me like a mocking stranger. The space beside me in our bed felt like a crater, each empty inch echoing with questions. I lay there, remembering how Rachel used to sleep, curled toward me, her hand often reaching for mine even in dreams. Now when she was home, she slept facing away, her body a fortress of secrets. The next morning brought a text that made my hands shake. "Closing deal with major donor today. Dinner meeting. Don't wait up." Marcus Wheeler. The name pulsed in my mind like a wound. I pulled up his profile on my laptop. Success carved into every line of his face, confidence radiating from his practiced smile. Recent headlines praised his latest development project, a luxury high-rise that would revolutionize Seattle's skyline. The kind of man who could open doors Rachel had only dreamed of. The kind of man who could offer her a life I couldn't. My fingers moved across the keyboard, searching for connections. There it was, a charity gala 3 months ago, where Rachel's gallery had been featured. Photos showed them standing together, Wheeler's hand resting just slightly too low on her back. Rachel wore that blue dress, her smile bright enough to blind me to what was hiding behind it. I closed the laptop, feeling sick. A memory surfaced. Rachel getting ready for that gala, me helping zip her dress, kissing her neck. She'd seemed nervous, which I'd attributed to the importance of the event. Now I wondered if it had been anticipation of a different kind. My phone buzzed. Tom again. Wheeler's office is in the Greystone building downtown. Same place Sarah saw Rachel's car yesterday. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. Every late night, every business meeting, every gallery emergency, they all led to the same gleaming tower of glass and steel. I opened our shared photo album on my phone, scrolling back through happier times. There we were on our 10th anniversary trip to Vancouver, Rachel laughing as I tried to take a selfie in the rain. Her eyes then had been clear, honest, full of simple joy. When had that joy become something more calculated? When had I stopped being enough? The answer hit me with brutal force. I hadn't stopped being enough. She had started wanting more. The gallery, the connections, the social climbing. There were steps on a ladder I hadn't even known we were climbing. Standing at our bedroom window, watching Seattle's endless rain, I made a decision. If Rachel was playing a game of secrets and lies, it was time to learn the rules. Because Marcus Wheeler might have money and power, but I had something he didn't. 15 years of knowing Rachel's heart. Even if that heart had turned against me. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. Some illnesses can't be measured by thermometers. They live in the spaces between heartbeats, in the shadows of doubt that grow longer with each passing day. Our home office held the ghost of simpler times. The walls still displayed Rachel's first gallery invitation, framed in silver, my surprise gift when she'd made the leap from art curator to owner. I remembered her tears of joy, how she'd whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you." Now those words felt like stones in my throat. I pulled up our financial records, methodically documenting every discrepancy, every unexplained charge. A pattern emerged like a constellation of betrayal. Dinners at places we'd never visited together, charges at hotels during supposed gallery events, a steady rhythm of deception set to the beat of her late meetings. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A series of large deposits into her personal account from an LLC I didn't recognize. Quick research revealed its connection to Wheeler Development Group. Consulting fees, the transfers noted, each one coinciding with her breakthrough moments at the gallery. My phone lit up with a text from Rachel. "Amazing news! Wheeler Group is sponsoring our next exhibition. Celebrating with the team tonight." I stared at her message, wondering if she felt anything when she crafted these lies. Did her fingers hesitate over the keyboard? Did she remember how we used to celebrate her victories together, just the two of us, with takeout and cheap wine on our balcony? The afternoon light filtered through our office window, catching the wedding photo on my desk. Rachel's smile, once the lighthouse that guided me home, now seemed like a warning I'd failed to heed. In the image, we were dancing, her head thrown back in laughter, my arms holding her like she was the most precious thing in my world. She had been. My phone rang. Sarah this time. "Jason." Her voice was gentle, hesitant. "There's something else." "The charity gala last month?" "Tom didn't want to tell you, but I saw Rachel and Wheeler leaving together. They got into his car. She didn't come back to the event." The same night, she'd texted about working late at the gallery. I closed my eyes, remembering how she'd kissed me goodbye that morning, straightening my tie with familiar tenderness. Had she already known then what the evening would bring? Had she planned it, rehearsed it, chosen her words as carefully as she'd chosen that dress? "Thank you, Sarah. I managed." I needed to know. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of our home office, surrounded by evidence of a life I thought we'd built together. But maybe that had been the first lie, the belief that we were building the same dream. Opening my laptop, I began a different kind of search. Marcus Wheeler had built his empire on calculated risks and aggressive expansion. Every tower he raised cast shadows over smaller businesses, over lives he deemed insignificant. I wondered if he saw me that way, another shadow to step over on his path to getting what he wanted. But shadows, I was learning, could hide surprising strengths. The weekend stretched before me like an open wound. Rachel had texted that she needed to prepare for the Wheeler exhibition, another elegant lie wrapped in professional pretense. Our house felt hollow, each room echoing with memories that now seemed like carefully crafted scenes in her performance. I found myself in our master bathroom, staring at her collection of perfumes on the vanity. The familiar violet bottle I'd given her last Christmas sat untouched, gathering dust. Beside it stood a new crystal flask, Clive Christian, worth more than my first car. I didn't need to check the receipt to know who had bought it. Opening her drawer, I discovered a small leather notebook, the kind she used to sketch exhibition layouts in. But these pages held different secrets. Hastily scrawled meeting times, phone numbers, notes about properties and investment opportunities. Wheeler's name appeared repeatedly, sometimes underlined, sometimes circled. My hands trembled as I photographed each page, feeling like an intruder in my own home. In the mirror, my reflection looked haunted, dark circles under my eyes, jaw tight with tension. When had I started looking so old, so defeated? A text lit up my phone, "Tom. You okay, man?" Sarah's worried. Before I could respond, another message arrived. "Rachel, amazing progress with Wheeler's team. Having dinner to discuss details. Miss you." I sat on the edge of our bed, holding her pillow. Her scent had changed, something expensive and unfamiliar, like her soul had been replaced with a luxury brand version. The Rachel I married wore summer rain and vanilla. This new Rachel wore power and ambition. Finding myself in her closet, I noticed the bottom drawer, usually locked, was slightly ajar. Inside lay a stack of handwritten notes on Wheeler Development Group stationery. Meeting summaries, exhibition plans, and something else, discussions about a private art advisory position. A role that would take her to New York, to London, away from Seattle, away from me. The magnitude of her deception crushed the air from my lungs. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete reimagining of her future, one where I existed only as a footnote in her rise to success. My phone buzzed again. Tom had sent a photo, Rachel entering the Greystone building, wearing the emerald silk dress I'd never seen before. Wheeler holding the door, his hand lingering on her back. The timestamp read 20 minutes ago. I sat in her closet, surrounded by the artifacts of her transformation, and felt something inside me shift. The pain was still there, but now it crystallized into something harder, colder. She wasn't just betraying our marriage. She was erasing our entire history, replacing it with a glossier, wealthier version that had no room for a software engineer who still believed in simple truths like honesty and loyalty. The sun set outside our bedroom window, painting Seattle's skyline in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere in that glittering landscape, my wife was crafting her escape into a different life. But she'd forgotten something crucial about me, something she'd once loved. I never left a puzzle unsolved, and this one was about to become my masterpiece. The days began bleeding together, each one a new lesson in the art of pretending. Rachel's absences had become so frequent that her presence felt like the anomaly, a guest appearance in the life we'd built together. That Wednesday morning, Seattle's sky crackled with unusual early spring thunder, matching my darkening mood. I sat at our kitchen island, watching rain streak down windows that had witnessed thousands of shared breakfasts, now replaced by silence and cold coffee. My laptop glowed with information about Wheeler Development Group, press releases, financial reports, business connections. Each click revealed more about the empire Rachel had chosen over our marriage. Project timelines, property acquisitions, charity galas that served as elegant hunting grounds for new investors. A new email notification popped up from an anonymous source I'd contacted through a business forum. My hands trembled as I opened it. Wheeler's latest project, Cascade Heights, isn't as solid as it seems. Latest geological surveys show unstable ground. He's hiding it from investors. Full report attached. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating our living room where Rachel's art collection hung like silent witnesses. I remembered how she used to tell me the story behind each piece, her eyes bright with passion for the artistry, not the price tag. My phone buzzed. Rachel, emergency meeting with investors. Don't wait up. Love you. The casual love you felt like acid on my skin. I checked on my phone. She was already at the Greystone building. Already with him. Opening the attached report, I began reading. Pages of technical data, environmental concerns, potential violations. Wheeler had built his reputation on luxury developments, but this report suggested his foundation was as unstable as the ground beneath his latest project. Another thunder crack rattled our windows. I thought about Rachel's notebook, her carefully planned exit strategy. She'd chosen her escape route, never suspecting that her path to a better life might be built on shifting sand. My fingers moved across the keyboard, drafting an email to a contact at the Seattle Business Journal. Not everything, not yet. Just enough to raise questions about Cascade Heights. Just enough to make investors nervous. Sometimes, my father used to say, the biggest trees fall the slowest. Wheeler had built his empire by destroying smaller businesses, by treating people like stepping stones. He thought money made him untouchable. But I understood something Rachel and Wheeler had forgotten. In the digital age, information was more valuable than gold. And I'd spent 15 years learning how to find, protect, and leverage information. Lightning split the sky again as I hit send. In the brief flash, I caught my reflection in the window, a man I barely recognized, transformed by betrayal into someone more dangerous than Rachel or Wheeler could imagine. because they'd underestimated me, dismissed me as the simple, trusting husband, too naive to see through their deception. Their mistake. Rain pounded against our windows like nature's judgment as I sat in my home office, surrounded by the digital threads of Wheeler's empire. My screen glowed with information that could shatter his carefully constructed facade. Environmental violations, questionable permits, a pattern of strategic donations to bypass regulations. The Seattle Business Journal article had dropped that morning. Questions arise over Cascade Heights development. Just a small stone in the pond, but the ripples were already spreading. Wheeler Development Group stock had dipped 3 points by lunch. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Crazy day at the gallery. Wheeler's team needs emergency consulting. Might be a late one. I wondered if she could feel it yet, the first tremors of the earthquake I'd set in motion. Did she sense the ground shifting beneath her perfectly planned future? Or was she too lost in her gilded dreams to notice the approaching storm? Standing at our bedroom window, I watched lightning split the sky. Each flash illuminated another memory. Rachel on our honeymoon, laughing as we got lost in Paris side streets. Rachel bringing me soup when I worked late, her touch gentle on my fevered forehead. Rachel promising forever, her voice thick with emotion as we slow danced at our wedding. Now every memory felt like holding broken glass. Beautiful, but dangerous to touch. My laptop chimed with another email from my anonymous source. Wheeler's trying to identify the leak. Board meeting called for tomorrow. Investors getting nervous. Good. Let him feel what it's like to have his foundation crack. Let him taste the bitter medicine of betrayal. A photo appeared on my phone. Tom trying to be a good friend. Rachel and Wheeler entering an upscale restaurant, his hand possessive on her lower back. She wore the diamond bracelet I'd noticed missing from her jewelry box last week. His gift, no doubt. Another piece of evidence in this tragedy I was chronicling. Thunder crashed overhead as I opened our safe, removing documents I'd gathered over weeks. Bank statements, phone records, hotel receipts. The geological survey that showed Wheeler's concrete dreams were built on unstable ground. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a cold certainty. Wheeler had built his life taking what he wanted, assuming money could solve any problem. Rachel had chosen his world of marble and mirrors over our life of honest love and shared dreams. They thought they were writing a story of ambition and passion. They didn't realize they'd wandered into a different genre entirely. Because while they'd been playing their game of secret meetings and coded messages, I'd been learning to play a different one. In the digital realm, where I'd spent my career, patience and precision mattered more than power and wealth. Lightning flashed again, and in that brilliant moment, I saw my reflection in the window, a man transformed by betrayal into something unexpected, something dangerous. In life's darkest moments, time moves differently. That Thursday morning stretched like a wire about to snap as I sat in our kitchen, watching rain wash Seattle's colors into gray smears. The Business Journal's follow-up article had just gone live. Cascade Heights development faces environmental scrutiny. Investors demand answers. My phone lit up with Rachel's message. Emergency at the gallery. Wheeler needs me to handle damage control. Don't wait up. Love you. The familiar lie tasted different now, knowing it would be one of her last. My laptop screen displayed emails from my anonymous source. Wheeler's empire was beginning to crack. His investors were pulling out, his reputation crumbling like the unstable ground beneath his precious development. I opened the folder I'd labeled Truth. Dozens of photographs, messages, bank statements. Rachel and Wheeler entering hotels. Their intimate dinners. The money trail that proved she wasn't just his lover, but his accomplice in sidestepping regulations and deceiving investors. The evidence sat heavy in my hands, each page a eulogy for the life we'd built. 15 years of love and trust, reduced to exhibits in a case file of betrayal. Standing in our bedroom, I touched Rachel's pillow one last time. Her scent, that expensive new perfume, lingered like a ghost. I remembered how she used to smell of summer rain and hope, back when her dreams were simpler and included me. It's done, Tom texted. The SEC received the anonymous tip about Wheeler's financial irregularities. They're opening an investigation. Thunder rolled outside as I picked up my phone to make the call I'd been rehearsing for weeks. Rachel answered on the third ring, her voice carrying that artificial brightness she'd perfected. "Jason, everything okay? Come home," I said quietly. Now, something in my tone must have penetrated her carefully constructed facade. "I'm in a meeting with Wheeler at the Greystone building. Come home, Rachel. It's time we talk about the truth." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When she spoke again, her voice trembled. "Jason, what are you—" "I know everything," I interrupted, each word a stone dropping into still water. "The affair, the money, the plans to leave. Come home now, or the next call I make is to the SEC with proof of your involvement in Wheeler's fraud." I ended the call, watching Seattle's skyline disappear behind sheets of rain. Somewhere out there, in Wheeler's glass tower, my wife's carefully constructed future was dissolving like a sandcastle in the tide. The sound of her key in the lock came sooner than I expected. She appeared in our doorway, makeup perfect, wearing that emerald dress I'd never bought her. But her eyes, those eyes that used to hold only love for me, were wide with fear. "How long?" I asked simply. She stood frozen, her designer purse clutched like a shield. "Jason, please." "How long?" A tear traced her perfect makeup. 6 months. I nodded slowly, opening my laptop to show her exactly what I knew. It was time for truth to have its moment in the rain. The rain drummed against our windows as Rachel stood in our bedroom, her perfect composure cracking like thin ice. I watched her, this stranger wearing my wife's face, as reality crashed through her carefully constructed walls. 6 months. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. 6 months of lies, of planning your escape. "Tell me, did you ever feel anything when you kissed me goodbye each morning, knowing where you were really going?" She sank onto the edge of our bed, the bed we'd chosen together, where we'd shared dreams and whispered promises. Her hands trembled as she clutched her designer purse, a gift from him. It wasn't planned," she whispered. "At first, it was just business. The gallery needed his connections, his influence. But then you decided his world was better than ours." I opened my laptop, turning it toward her. Better than 15 years of honest love. Her face drained of color as she saw the evidence. Photos, bank statements, hotel receipts. The geological survey that proved Wheeler's corruption. Their secret emails planning her transition to his company. Their future together. "How did you—" Her voice cracked. "While you were playing society wife with Wheeler, you forgot who I am. What I do." I moved to the window, watching lightning split the sky. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't find the truth?" A sob caught in her throat. "Jason, please. We could talk about this. I can explain." "Explain what, Rachel?" "How you helped him bypass environmental regulations. How you planned to disappear into his world of private jets and penthouses." I turned to face her. "Or should we talk about the offshore accounts? The ones you helped him hide from the SEC?" She stood abruptly, panic replacing guilt in her eyes. "You don't understand. Marcus, I cut in, is about to lose everything. The SEC investigation starts tomorrow. His investors are already pulling out. Cascade Heights will never break ground." Understanding dawned on her face like a brutal sunrise. "What have you done?" "I protected myself. Something you should have thought about before you chose him." Her composure shattered completely then. Tears streaked her perfect makeup as the magnitude of her situation hit her. "I'll lose everything. The gallery, my reputation." "Yes," I said quietly. "You will. Just like I lost everything 6 months ago. I just didn't know it then." Thunder crashed outside, and in that moment, I saw the truth in her eyes. Not remorse for betraying our marriage, but fear of losing her carefully planned future. The Rachel I'd loved had truly disappeared long ago, replaced by this woman who valued status over loyalty, wealth over love. "I'm filing for divorce in the morning," I said. "You might want to warn your lover that his empire is about to crumble. Though I doubt he'll have time for you once his investors finish with him." She swayed slightly, her designer dress suddenly looking like costume jewelry, flashy but fundamentally fake. "Jason, please." But I was already walking away, leaving her alone in the bedroom where we'd once shared a lifetime of honest love. Sometimes I realized the deepest wounds come not from the betrayal itself, but from finally seeing the truth about who you loved. Some endings feel like beginnings in disguise. As I stood in our home office the next morning, watching Seattle's skyline emerge from the storm clouds, I felt the weight of finality settling around me like a familiar coat. The news had broken at dawn. Wheeler Development Group under federal investigation. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages from lawyers, investigators, journalists. The empire built on lies was crumbling in spectacular fashion, taking with it the dreams of everyone who'd chosen to dance in its gilded halls. Rachel had left hours ago, a small suitcase rolling behind her like a faithful dog. She hadn't met my eyes as she passed me, her designer clothes somehow looking borrowed now, like costumes from a play that had ended mid-scene. The diamond bracelet Wheeler had given her lay on the kitchen counter, her final attempt at penance, or perhaps just another calculation. "The SEC wants to talk to you," Tom texted. "Wheeler's trying to claim ignorance, but your evidence is bulletproof." I touched the frame holding our wedding photo, remembering how young we'd been, how full of simple dreams. We'd wanted a life together, not an empire. Somewhere along the way, Rachel had forgotten the difference. The divorce papers sat on my desk, waiting for signatures that would formalize what had already ended months ago. Beside them lay printouts of Wheeler's crumbling financial statements, his investors fleeing like rats from a sinking ship, his reputation dissolving faster than morning mist. My phone lit up with a final message from Rachel. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted more." I didn't respond. Some wounds don't need words to heal. They need silence and time. And truthfully, I was beginning to understand that the woman I'd loved had disappeared long before I discovered her betrayal. The stranger wearing her face these past months was someone I'd never really known at all. Looking out at the city where we'd built our life together, I felt something unexpected. Not victory or vindication, but peace. The kind that comes from finally seeing truth clearly, no matter how much it hurts. They say every ending teaches us something. This one taught me that love isn't just about trust. It's about choosing each other every day, through simple moments and ordinary dreams. Rachel had chosen marble halls and empty promises. I'd chosen truth, even when it cut like broken glass. Wheeler would rebuild, probably. Men like him always did. Rachel would find her way in the world she'd chosen. But they'd both carry scars from this. Not just financial or social, but deeper wounds that come from knowing their own capacity for betrayal. As for me, I had our memories, now carefully packed away like delicate china. I had truth, hard-won and precious. And I had tomorrow, stretching out before me like an unwritten page. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. Sometimes the deepest victory isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in understanding that you're stronger than the pain. Seattle's morning light painted the sky in shades of hope as I closed the last box of Rachel's things. Outside, the city was waking up, unchanged by our private earthquakes. Life would go on, different but perhaps more honest. And in the end, that's all I'd ever wanted. Not vengeance or victory, but truth. Simple, unvarnished truth. The kind you can build a life on. A year can change everything. As I stand on my new balcony overlooking Lake Union, Seattle's autumn rain creates gentle ripples across the water, each circle expanding outward like the waves of change that transform my life. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Wheeler Development Group filed for bankruptcy protection, its gleaming towers now shadows of failed ambition. Rachel moved to Chicago. I heard through mutual friends she's working at a small gallery, starting over without the glitter and glamour she once chased. Some nights, when the rain taps against my windows with familiar rhythm, I find myself touching the empty space on my left hand where my wedding ring used to rest. Not out of longing, but as a reminder of how invisible the deepest wounds can be, how silently trust can bleed out while we're busy believing in forever. I kept one photo from our wedding. Not the pose shots of perfect smiles, but a candid moment. Rachel laughing at something I'd whispered, her head thrown back, joy unscripted and real. I keep it not to torment myself, but to remember that genuine happiness exists, even if it doesn't last forever. Sarah and Tom have been my anchors through the storm. Their simple, honest love reminds me that not every relationship is built on shifting sand. Last week, over dinner at their place, their daughter asked why Aunt Rachel doesn't visit anymore. Sometimes people choose different paths, Sarah explained, squeezing my hand under the table. The simplicity of the truth, spoken with such gentleness, made something inside me finally release. My therapist says healing isn't linear. It's more like the tide, ebbing and flowing, each wave carrying away small pieces of pain until eventually the shore is smooth again. She's right. Some days the memories wash over me like I'm drowning. Other days, I can breathe so deeply it feels like the first real breath I've taken in years. I've started dating again, cautiously. Her name is Claire, and she's a children's book illustrator. She knows my story. I told her on our third date, sitting by the water at Alki Beach. She listened without judgment, then shared her own scars from a past betrayal. There was something healing in that exchange of wounds, that mutual understanding that trust, once broken, must be rebuilt brick by brick. The irony doesn't escape me that in trying to destroy me, Rachel and Wheeler inadvertently set me free. Their betrayal taught me that sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted opens the door to everything you actually need. Seattle stretches before me, its lights reflected in the rain-soaked streets like scattered stars. Each one represents a story, a life being lived, a heart learning to trust again after breaking. We're all just trying to find our way home, even when home looks different than we imagined. The future isn't what I planned, but maybe that's the point. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the ashes of what we thought we couldn't live without. I raise my coffee to the rainy horizon, to new beginnings built on honest foundations, to the quiet strength that comes from surviving what you thought would break you. Sometimes the happiest endings start with goodbye. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Watch our new stories here. And see you soon.